Hey everyone, I'm Jake Hart and welcome to the Deep Dive where we take a bunch of sources and kind of pull out the most interesting stuff. It's like we're giving you a shortcut to being like super well informed.
That's a great way to put it.
So today we're diving into a topic that, one of our listeners sent in, and it's a whole collection of articles, research, even a YouTube documentary all about telepathy.
Ooh, telepathy.
Specifically in non-speaking children, a lot of whom are diagnosed with autism. And so the big question is this like a real thing? Or are we like stepping into the world of science fiction?
I'm Zara Moon, by the way. Hey, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the show.
This is Zara.
This is a topic that really kind of pushes the boundaries of what we usually think of as scientific. Most scientists work from a framework called materialism, which is this belief that everything can be explained by, physical matter and how it interacts.
Right.
Telepathy, if it's real, suggests a connection between minds that goes beyond, just the physical stuff.
Yeah,
And that's a pretty big challenge to, like, the way science usually works.
it totally is. And speaking of challenges, one thing that really stood out to me from the YouTube documentary, The Telepathy Takes, was this mother who said her daughter could read her mind, like even from the womb.
Wow.
Pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
How often do people make these kinds of claims?
Well, it's fascinating because the documentary follows this neuroscientist, Dr. Diane Powell. She was trained at Johns Hopkins,
Okay.
and she gets tons of emails from parents all over the world describing these really similar experiences with their non-speaking kids. And a lot of these parents, they feel isolated and disbelieved because they're like trying to figure out what's going on with their kids and how to deal with this unexpected phenomenon.
I can only imagine,
Yeah.
discovering that your kid might have this crazy ability, but then facing all this doubt from other people. That's got to be tough.
It is. And what's even more interesting is that a lot of these discoveries happen after the kids learn to communicate using things like letter boards or iPads.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a whole new world opened up, not just for the kids, but for the parents' understanding of them.
Right.
So in the documentary, we hear about kids reading their parents' minds, finding hidden objects, even answering questions that were only asked mentally.
Wait, hold on. Reading minds, finding hidden objects. Are we talking superpowers now? There's this story in the documentary about a girl who always knew how many potato chips were left in the house,
What?
even when her parents tried to hide them.
That's amazing.
Next level snacking intuition, right? But seriously, how did they actually test these claims? Was there any real scientific investigation going on?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Powell did a bunch of experiments. A lot of them were even filmed.
Cool.
They set up these really controlled environments, used blindfolds to make sure the kids couldn't see any visual cues.
Right.
They even used random number generators to make things unpredictable.
Right.
And get this, they even did color matching tests with popsicle sticks.
Wow.
And the documentary team was super careful to make sure there was no way the kids could be cheating.
So thorough. There's one experiment that's described in both the YouTube video and the research papers that really caught my eye. It involved a girl named Mia who could accurately identify numbers and pictures that her mother was looking at. She was getting over 95% accuracy in some of the tests.
Wow.
So was Mia like a one-of-a-kind case? Or did other kids show these kinds of abilities too?
Mia's case wasn't unique at all. The research actually mentions several other kids who showed similar abilities. There's a girl named Haley who got around 90% accuracy.
That's incredible. And this connection, it seems really specific. Mia couldn't read her father's mind. It wasn't like she had this general mind-reading superpower. It seemed more tied to a specific relationship.
Yeah.
Which makes you wonder, what's really going on there? What makes these connections so special and selective? With results that specific, what did the scientific community think? Did these findings convince anyone?
Well, here's where things get really interesting. Even after seeing Mia's abilities firsthand, Dr. Powell said that those experiments wouldn't be accepted by mainstream science. And the documentary filmmaker, he went into this whole thing pretty skeptical, but he was blown away by what he saw.
I bet.
He saw it with his own eyes. But even he admitted that these findings are a huge challenge to the way science usually thinks.
So you have this scientist doing controlled experiments, this skeptical filmmaker documenting everything and these crazy results. But it's still not enough for mainstream science. It feels like the more we learn, the more questions pop up. Why wouldn't this evidence be accepted? Is science missing something here?
It all comes back to that idea of materialism that we talked about earlier.
Right.
Our current scientific methods are mostly designed to measure and explain the physical world.
Okay.
But if telepathy is real, it suggests there might be something more, a connection that goes beyond just the physical. And that's a really tough pill for a lot of scientists to swallow.
It's almost like a catch-22. These stories are super intriguing,
Yeah.
but they challenge everything we think we know about how the world works. It must be really unsettling for everyone involved to be stuck between these seemingly real experiences and the limits of science.
Absolutely. And remember, the documentary doesn't end there. It ends with the filmmaker looking for even more convincing cases.
Oh, wow.
So if Mia's abilities weren't good enough for mainstream science, what would it take to prove it?
That's a great question to think about. What would it take to bring telepathy from the fringes of science into the mainstream?
Right.
We'll be right back to continue exploring this wild topic.
Hey, are you enjoying this podcast so far? If you are, would you kindly subscribe, like, and share our channel? We would appreciate your support to help us grow and thrive so that we may broadcast more extraordinary stories. Thank you for listening to Mystic Podcast Cruise. And now, back to our program.
We're back and still diving deep into the world of telepathy. Before we took a break, we were talking about how these crazy stories clash with what science says. So if even seeing Mia's abilities with their own eyes wasn't enough for scientists, what would it take for them to really believe that telepathy is a real thing?
That's the heart of it, right? Like, how do we say we have proof when we're dealing with something as complex and slippery as, consciousness? The documentary kind of touches on how the materialist view of the world, that everything is just physical matter, might be holding us back. What if consciousness works on a whole different level, one that our current tools and methods just can't pick up or measure?
It makes you wonder if we need a whole new set of tools and ways of thinking to even begin to understand stuff like telepathy. Are we trying to jam a square peg into a round hole by only using this materialist framework to try to explain something like telepathy?
That's a perfect way to put it. For centuries, people thought the Earth was flat because that's all they could see with their limited senses and technology. It wasn't until we developed new tools and expanded our understanding of the cosmos that we realized, hey, the Earth is actually round. Maybe we're at a similar point with consciousness.
So we might need to revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, kind of like shifting from a flat Earth perspective to a spherical one. That's a pretty huge leap. The documentary also showed how tough it is for the families going through this. They're not only dealing with the challenges of raising a child who communicates differently, but they're also grappling with this extraordinary ability that most of the world just dismisses.
It's like a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, they're seeing something incredible, something that suggests we might be way more connected as human beings than we ever imagined. But on the other hand, they're often met with skepticism and disbelief, even from the people they're looking to for support.
That must be so isolating. Imagine seeing your child do something amazing, something that breaks all the rules, only to be told it's impossible or all in your head. The documentary mentioned that telepathy might only be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these kids' abilities. What do they mean by that?
That's where things get even crazier. As we dig deeper into the research, we find out that a lot of these kids who show telepathic abilities also talk about other weird experiences. For example, Mia's family mentioned that she sees things that others can't, and she has memories from when she was a tiny baby.
Wow. So we're talking about a whole range of perceptions and abilities that are outside of what's considered normal. It's like these kids are tuned into a level of consciousness that most of us are totally oblivious to.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research so captivating. It challenges us to rethink what's possible and to consider that our current model of reality might be totally incomplete. It's like getting a peek into a hidden dimension of human potential.
It's almost like we're standing on the edge of a new scientific frontier, gazing into these uncharted territories of the human mind. But if traditional science is hitting a wall, where do we go from here? What other approaches might help us understand these mysteries?
Well, one area that's gaining some attention among scientists is quantum mechanics, the study of the universe at a super tiny level where the rules of classical physics don't really apply anymore.
Okay, quantum mechanics. Now we're getting into some heavy stuff. Can you break that down for our listeners? What does quantum physics have to do with telepathy?
Imagine two coins flipped far apart, but they always land on the same side, even though there's no obvious physical link between them. That's kind of how particles act in the quantum world. They can be entangled, meaning their fates are intertwined no matter how far apart they are.
So instead of a universe where everything is separate and independent, quantum mechanics suggests a universe where everything is linked even at the smallest level.
Precisely. And some scientists think these quantum principles might be at play in consciousness itself. What if our minds aren't just physical brains but operate on a quantum level where entanglement and non-locality are just how things work?
That would definitely make things like telepathy seem a lot less far out. If our minds are connected in ways we're only beginning to grasp, then maybe sending thoughts and feelings across distances isn't so crazy after all. But wouldn't that totally upend our current understanding of science?
It would require a massive shift in perspective. Even Dr. Powell, a well-respected neuroscientist, faced resistance for just looking into this topic. It goes against the grain of how science has traditionally studied the mind.
It's like those who dared to say that the Earth wasn't flat. At first they were laughed at and dismissed, but their ideas ended up completely transforming our understanding of the world. Maybe those who are exploring telepathy and how consciousness might be connected to quantum mechanics are the pioneers of a new scientific era.
It's definitely a possibility, and it makes you wonder if Mia's abilities weren't good enough for mainstream science, what kind of evidence would bridge the gap between these extraordinary experiences and science we know today?
What an amazing and thought-provoking conversation.
Yeah.
This whole topic has been a wild ride. And, we've been on this incredible journey exploring telepathy, especially in kids who don't speak, and how these stories challenge what science tells us. So where do we go from here? If traditional science is having trouble wrapping its head around this stuff, are there other avenues we can look at?
That's the million-dollar question, right? If we want to truly understand something like telepathy, we might need to broaden our scientific horizons. And one path that some researchers are exploring is the potential role of quantum mechanics in consciousness.
Quantum mechanics. Well, that sounds super complicated. Can you explain it in a way that makes sense for our listeners? Like, how could quantum mechanics even be connected to telepathy?
Okay, let's try this. Imagine you have these two tiny particles separated by a huge distance, but they act like they're linked. If you change one particle, the other one changes instantly, no matter how far apart they are. It's called quantum entanglement. It's one of the most mind-blowing things in quantum mechanics.
So instead of everything being separate and independent, like we usually think quantum mechanics says that things are fundamentally connected, even across huge distances. But how does this relate to consciousness and telepathy?
Well, some scientists believe that consciousness itself might actually operate on a quantum level. What if our minds aren't just stuck in our physical brains, but are also entangled with each other in ways we don't even fully understand? If that's true, then telepathy wouldn't be so weird anymore. It would just be like a natural outcome of this deeper connection.
That's a really cool idea. But it totally flips our normal view of how the world works.
Yeah.
It's like saying our minds are linked through this invisible network that goes beyond space and time.
It's definitely a radical concept, and it's still pretty much on the fringes of science. But remember, every big scientific revolution starts with an idea that challenges the status quo. Think about Galileo when he said the Earth goes around the sun back then. That was a crazy idea, but it ended up changing how we saw the whole universe.
Right.
Maybe the people looking into telepathy and the quantum nature of consciousness are like the Galileos of our time, leading the way to a new understanding of the mind and what it can do.
That's a really exciting thought. And it makes you realize how important it is to stay open to new ideas and approaches, even if they sound out there at first.
Yeah.
If we only stick to our current scientific models, we might miss out on some of the most amazing discoveries about ourselves and the nature of reality.
It's like that famous quote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Maybe what we think of as telepathy or other paranormal things are just glimpses of a reality that we haven't figured out how to understand yet.
Exactly. Maybe one day, the stuff we call paranormal will become normal science.
Right.
Well, this has been quite the deep dive into telepathy. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is to never stop being curious and open-minded. The world is full of mysteries, and even though science has come a long way in explaining things, there's still so much we don't know. Telepathy and stuff like that push us to think bigger and consider possibilities that might seem impossible right now.
It reminds us that there's still a sense of wonder and mystery out there. Even with all our technology and science, we shouldn't be afraid to ask questions, explore the unknown, and consider ideas that might seem crazy at first.
Exactly. You never know. Some of those seemingly crazy ideas might be the keys to unlocking a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe.
This has been such a fascinating exploration. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And to our listeners, keep exploring these questions and see where your own curiosity takes you. Until next time, keep diving.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mystic Podcast Cruise. If you enjoyed today's story, give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who love uncovering life's mysteries. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Your support helps us continue bringing you captivating stories about the unknown, the mystical, and the extraordinary. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and keep cruising through the mysteries of life with us here on Mystic Podcast Cruise.